Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Anyone who knows me knows I love reading. I love reading historical fiction books, romance novels, books on psychology, history, or politics. I think reading is just a great way to get your brain working again after watching too many episodes on Netflix. Guilty. I'm going to share 3 books I recommend that I've read recently and wanted to share with you guys. But before we get started, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I create videos on fashion, beauty, lifestyle, and travel content. And if you like videos like this, please let me know in the comments so I know to create more of these videos for you guys. Okay, so the first book I have for you guys is this one right here called The Fountains of Silence. This book is set mainly in 1957 Madrid, Spain, under the oppressive dictatorship of General Francisco Franco. This book is crazy. Without giving too much away, especially if you're not familiar with the history of this country during this regime, families were basically being told that their children died during birth, but then didn't actually die. So it is very eye-opening and interesting to learn about because it was definitely an oppressive regime and there was a lot of stuff going on that people didn't know about. I always love reading historical fiction because I think you're learning about a time and at the same time enjoying a story through it. So it has a love story and a story with family and tragedy all mixed into one novel, and it's great. What I really like about this, it has some Spanish in it, but there's like a glossary at the back that kind of gives the English translations for what's being said. It doesn't happen too often, but it's like nicely mixed into the dialogue. There's also excerpts from oral history interviews that kind of give a nice historical framing throughout the storyline of everything that's going on. It's nice to kind of relate this back to like the real world because this is obviously a fiction novel, but it's based in a real life situation. The next book is The Great Pretender. It says here on the cover, in 1973, a charismatic doctor convinced 8 healthy people to commit themselves to mental hospitals. They had to prove their sanity to be set free. Their undercover mission would change our understanding of madness forever. So this is a book that a journalist wrote that kind of covers a study that was done by a Stanford psychologist named David Rosenhan. I wrote something down to kind of give a gist of what this is about, so I'm going to read it to you guys. The study where 8 people, including himself, went undercover into asylums around the U.S. to test the legitimacy of how the institution identified mental illness. The study, however, might not be what everyone thought it was at the time. This book covers also a brief timeline of psychology, like the history of how, mental health evolved, how it's diagnosed then versus now, asylums of the past, and how and why many of them closed down. How sometimes people are diagnosed with having a mental illness when it's actually a neurological one, and the fact that there is so much to learn in this field of study and how we don't have all the answers yet. This book also covers a crazy revelation about the Stanford prison experiment, at least crazy for me. I did not know this, but that experiment had data that was fabricated. So this author also has tons of sources to everything she covers at the back of the book, and I highly recommend it to anyone who's really interested in learning about psychology and related topics because she does a great job with kind of giving a nice overall picture of the field, but also just like documenting how she went about finding the information that she did, and everything is sourced at the back of the book, as I mentioned. But it's really good. I have like stickies all over it because I love learning about psych and history. So this was a great book. So the last book I have for you guys is The Book Thief. I know some of you guys might have read this in school. I was never assigned this in school, like in my high school, middle school. We never read this, but I always knew it was a classic and I always was just like curious about it. I could cry thinking about this book. It is just so much. So basically this book is set in Germany during World War II. But it doesn't cover as the main focus those who suffered in the Holocaust in the way that we know it to have happened. It focuses more on the people in Germany and those who suffered for just being civilians of that country during a war. And I definitely think it helps kind of bring importance to remembering that when we discuss nations and people in power as political leaders and leaders of countries that it's important to not associate every person under that nation as having the same views or the same power as the leaders. Because at the end of the day, most wars have many, not most wars, all wars have many people who have nothing to do with what's going on and are just also victims to it all because of the leadership that they have, that they might not even be aware of or had even voted for that person or had an opportunity to vote for that person. So yeah, I think it's just like, you think of Germany as the bad guy of this war, which obviously Germany as a country was definitely the bad guy, but there's definitely people in that country that suffered that had nothing to do with anything. They were just people trying to survive. So it focuses on the civilians of Germany, citizens of Germany, especially this street or this area of very poor people. And the narrator of this story, which is really interesting, and I've never read a book like this before, but the narrator is death. Like, I guess the Grim Reaper, if you think of it that way. But it's death who's telling you the story. And the story follows this girl, this young girl, who he comes across because he is collecting the souls of those who pass. So someone passes near her, and so he sees her for the first time, and she's like collecting books, which is why she's like called the book thief. And you'll understand more of why she is a book thief as you read along. But so he is basically explaining her story. It's very, this story is just about hope and happiness in small moments. It's about loss and pain of people who do not want to be involved in this and are seemingly forced to be because of how it was in that country at that time. This book will literally break your heart over and over again because it does this thing, the way that it's written, it tells you, the narrator tells you what happens before it happens. So like there's not even really any surprises in this book because the narrator straight up, the narrator is death. So he's kind of like, I've already known a lot of how things end for people. And so he's aware of how things end for certain people, but it won't like lead up to it. He'll like tell you and then tell you the story of what happened. And even with telling you, it doesn't take away how painful it is to read what happens to some of these people because it's just really sad. And you might be wondering, why am I recommending you a book that will make you cry? Because it's a good cry. I think it's a really important read. I think it's very impactful. It's a book I would gladly allow to break my heart again. Okay, so those are my book recommendations. I hope I explained everything okay. It's definitely interesting to speak about books through a camera. I'm just like used to talking about things more related to like fashion or things I use. So this is like the first time I'm doing a video talking about books. But I love reading and I really wanted to share with you guys some things that have read and I really liked because I think it's good. Everyone needs to read more. Reading helps the soul, Yeah. So grab yourself a book, read along, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.